Sportscast, July 29th, 2020. If you haven't yet, please subscribe in all our channels, YouTube, Periscope, and iTunes. And if you're in iTunes, please leave a rating and a review. It will help us out tremendously. And of course, visit us on thesportscast.net, thesportscast.net. This episode is brought to you by InstaBible app. You can get the app on the iOS App Store. The tide is turning. College football conferences are getting their schedules together. Some are announcing what they're going to do for this season in the midst of a pandemic. We got Ryan Krista on the line. Welcome to the Sportscast.
Santiago, it's good to be here. Good talking college football. Hopefully we got some games in sight, maybe 1 month from now.
Definitely. And we got a special guest, so we don't have to do any headlines because he can speak with us about it. Can you do the honors, Ryan Krista?
Sure. Today we have ESPN college football broadcaster Rene Ingoglia. He does a lot of college football games, and he is former UMass standout running back, former NFL player, former NFL Europe player, and he's here to talk some college football with us, and also from my hometown of Rochester, New York. Rene, welcome to the Sportscast.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys. Looking forward to it.
Rene, so tell us your story of your Rochester story and how'd you get out of Rochester?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So I, as Ryan said, grew up in Rochester, New York. My story's a little weird. I played varsity football as an 8th grader. So I got recruited pretty heavily in high school. Of course, in the 80s, guys, no internet, no high school games on national television. If your name was in the front page of the sports section, that was awesome, right? Just a different time. But I got recruited pretty heavily. And then, Murphy's Law, my senior year, and I had been offered a bunch of scholarships my junior year, which was kind of unheard of back then. And my senior year, I blew my knee out. And when you blow your knee out back then, it was like, you're done. I lost all those scholarships. So I was fortunate enough that the University of Massachusetts was the only school, one and only school to offer me a full scholarship. I was getting recruited pretty heavily by Syracuse, who was a national power at the time. Dick McPherson, God rest his soul, Hall of Fame coach with the Patriots, and of course, Syracuse Orangemen, basically called UMass and said, hey, this guy, we were recruiting him, we were taking him, he's hurt, so we're getting off him, but you guys should give him a scholarship. And Jim Reed, the head coach at UMass at the time, sight unseen, basically offered me a full scholarship. So I went there and fortunate enough to play for 4 years, had a great career, got my degree. And then I like to tell people I had a cup and a half of coffee in the NFL, played in NFL Europe. So it worked out. It worked out well. And then fortunate enough, really the last 10 years, this will be, knock on wood, this season will be the 11th year with ESPN if we have college football, which I'm an optimist, guys. I think we're going to have it. And so, yeah, I've kind of parlayed my football playing career into broadcasting, which I love. It keeps me a part of the game. So it's pretty great.
Before the injury, which schools were pursuing you like the most?
Sure. So Syracuse. So back then you always hear teams say that they put the proverbial fence around their area. So back then in New York State, if there was someone good in New York State, Syracuse zeroed in on you. They were not going to let you go. With that said, Boston College recruited me real heavily. And I really liked Boston College. I went to a Catholic high school, so that appealed to me, BC. And the one that really recruited me the most, I think, was Wisconsin. And they're the ones that offered me my junior season. They basically said, we're going to give you a full scholarship. You're one of our main guys. And I tell people this story all the time. This kind of is the reality of college sports and the business of it. When they found out I blew my knee out, they basically said, let me explain it to you like this. You're our guy. So he goes, picture this. You go to purchase a car at a dealership, and you go through the dealership and you find the car you want and you pick out that car. And you're like, that's the car I'm going to buy. You come back a couple weeks later to buy the car. There's a dent in the car. You didn't put the dent in the car. You don't ask how the dent got in the car. You just know there's a dent in the car. So guess what? You're going to get the next best car to that one. And that's the way recruiting was. So they went with the next guy in their running back position. And so I learned a very valuable lesson at 18 years of age that, you can't take anything for granted. And you also, that's life. That's why I love sports. I love football. It mimics life because life is going to knock you on your butt. And you can do two things. You can just sulk and you can cry and you can say, why me? Or you can rehab and get better and bust your butt and get the opportunities you get, work for them, and go make the best of it. And I did. I'm one of those guys. I always believe everything happens for a reason. You know, I went to UMass, which was a smaller Division I school, but I got to start for 4 years. I was a first-team All-American, played in the Hula Bowl. You know, I'm in their Hall of Fame. So, you know, I have to me, everything happened for a reason. So I'm thrilled. And like, again, it's a huge life lesson at a young age, but for the good.
Rene, I like a little side fact. You went to Bishop Kearney High School where my dad played football many years before you did, but it's cool.
And they're still going, still kicking. They're doing good. They're a little smaller now. Their numbers are down. Of course, so, you know, when I played back then, Ryan, you know, the city of Rochester, we had a league. It was called the City Catholic League. Yeah. So it was the Catholic schools and the city schools. And you want to talk about talent and just going at it. I mean, it was unbelievable. And of course, since then, you know, the Catholic diocese has closed a bunch of schools. So there's not many Catholic schools left. I think Aquinas Institute.
Yes.
Aquinas two. I think McQuaid Jesuit might still be going, but it's a lot different now. But it was back in the late 80s, some great football.
Yes, Coach Koss will get him going. Don't worry about that. He's a good guy.
He sure is.
So let me ask you one last thing about Rochester. When's the last time you had a garbage plate?
The last time I was there, I always get a garbage plate when I go back there. So I, you know, like you, I grew up on garbage plates. I love them now. You know, I'm almost 50 now, so I can't lose weight the way I used to. So, I mean, I used to wolf down garbage plates like crazy. So, you know, if I had them in Orlando, I'd have to back off. But when I get back to Rochester, and I still have a lot of family up there, so when I get back up, I'll definitely have one. But to answer your question directly, it was probably about 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay. All right. It's kind of like me and my wife's thing. We love probably a couple of garbage plates a year, but like you said, they're hard to burn off.
Yeah.
Can you tell us your time in high school? Like, what was your record? What type of player were you?
Yeah, so, you know, and I don't know if Ryan might not even know this. So I actually started my high school career at Eastridge High School, which was a public school in the Rochester area. And I ended up transferring my sophomore year to Bishop Kearney. I needed more structure in my life, I think education-wise, and just I needed it. And I got there. And it was funny because when I transferred there, all the coaches were telling the players from Bishop Kearney, hey, we got this great running back coming in. So everybody on my new team wanted to kill me. So, I mean, practice was just a battle. They were like, oh, the coaches think this guy's good. I'm going to show him something. But I tell you what, it made me a better player. And we went to the Section 5 championship 2 years in a row there. We won it my junior year. My senior year is when I got hurt early on, like second game of my senior year. So we didn't make it back. And that was before New York State had state playoffs, unfortunately, because that junior year team, I can tell you, we were ranked going into the season. We weren't even ranked in the top 10 of Rochester schools, which was crazy because we had a really good team. About 4 or 5 of us from that one team, which was 1989, went Division I. Bunch of guys went Division III. And I remember that particular year, the City Catholic League had broken up that year. So we played an independent schedule. We played a team out of the Albany area, Gloversville, New York, which was really good. I think Gloversville at the time was ranked, I don't know, like 10th in the state of New York. We weren't even ranked in Rochester. And we went down to Gloversville on a Friday night in front of about 5,000 people and just demolished them. We beat them like 41-0. And I remember my older brother, Rob, they had asked him to hold the chains on the, you know, how they'll grab fans to be the chain gang. And he was down there. And I remember we were crushing him. And some parent from Gloverville was doing something on the sideline. He goes, man, what are they ranked in the state? And my brother laughed. And he goes, they're not even ranked in Rochester, which was crazy. We ended up that year. We ended up, I think 9-1-1. And we ended up ranked. I think we finished the year ranked third in New York State and first in Rochester. So it was a good year.
Sounds good. All right, let's transition into your career at UMass. Now, I know we played football. Did you overlap any time during the powerhouse years of basketball at UMass?
That's exactly when I was there. So John Calipari, when I got there, I think Calipari was in his second year. So I was at UMass. I played 92 to 95 because I redshirted in 91, but I was there through every basketball run. And, it's funny. I still talk to Marcus Camby on Twitter, a couple times a year, and Lou Rowe, those guys, and Derek Kellogg, who was one of the guards on the team that went back and coached there for a long time, but he's coaching elsewhere now. So I stay in touch with a few of them. But yeah, I was there for all the runs, and I was a huge basketball fan. I went to all the basketball games. It was a fun time to be a UMass student athlete.
How was the like when you played football for UMass? How was like the level of play there? Was it like high standard? Like, what were your thoughts when you were there?
It was really good. Now I wish so. It's FCS now, but it was called 1AA when I played. But back then, 1AAs, the FCSs, we didn't get a chance to play the bigger schools, the FBS or the 1As. I wish we did back then. But I can tell you, I'll put it this way. In 94, we played Youngstown State, who was a perennial power. They went on and won the FCS or 1AA national championship that year. And I think we lost to them. I think it was like 14-9. It was a really good game, and they were a powerhouse. So I know UMass, we had a lot of talent. And the biggest difference is at the FBS level, you have 85 scholarships. At the FCS level, there's 62 scholarships. So you don't have that depth in scholarship. That's really the biggest difference. But the quality of play is excellent, and it still is today. And you'll see every year. Now this year, guys, might be different because every year FCS teams play FBSs. We don't know what's going to happen with non-conference games this year, but every single year when an FCS plays an FBS, put it in the books, and FCS will beat an FBS. It happens every year. It's happened every year you can go back 20-something years. It happens. And then, of course, North Dakota State, which is one of the best college programs in the nation, whether FBS or FCS, and they're an FCS program. So there's good talent out there in both those levels.
Yeah, I think they have like a 6-game winning streak, I think I heard, against the FBS, and
the
Oregon this year.
Sucky thing for us as college football fans is North Dakota State was supposed to play Oregon this year. And so that game will probably be lost. I mean, because the Pac-12 said they're not doing any non-conference, but I would have loved to see that. I think Oregon wins that game because Oregon's a top 10 program this year with Mario Cristobal. But boy, I would have loved to see them play North Dakota State.
Now, have you had a chance, Rene, to watch the quarterback from North Dakota State? Is it Stick? I think his last name is Stick. He's a pretty highly regarded NFL prospect. Have you had a chance to watch him play?
I've seen him. I've seen that there's a couple guys they got out there now. So, yeah, I've seen them all, and it's phenomenal. And I think the benefit that North Dakota State has is where they are geographically, they're the big honcho. So they get a lot of guys that can play at the FBS level, but they choose to go to North Dakota State and say, hey, I'm going to play in the FCS level. And guess what? I'm going to have an opportunity to play for a national championship every single year. So they do a phenomenal job recruiting. I mean, they steal a lot of players that otherwise would go to bigger schools.
Yeah, definitely recruiting is a huge deal. Tell us your time at UMass. What was your best season and your best game?
Yeah, so, it was a great time. When I got there, like I said, I had a knee injury. So you'll like this story. So I had Jim Reed, the head coach, said, we're going to give you a full scholarship. You're going to come here. You are going to redshirt the first year. You are not padding up. You're going to rehab your knee, and you're going to get better. So that whole first year, I never even put pads on. And it was funny because I was out there with no pads, and I'd run around, and all the players that are busting their butts in pads are like, who's this guy? How come he doesn't have pads on? And so no pads. So I didn't put pads on again until the spring. Boy, so it would have been the spring of 1992. So I blew my knee out basically in 90, the end of 90, at the end of 90. And I didn't put pads on again until spring of 92. And I'll never forget, Jim Reed said, I think we're going to make you a defensive back. I mean, that's always what happens because in high school, all the good players are, running backs, quarterbacks, receivers. And there's just not enough positions when you get to college, right? So they'll take these athletes. A lot of times that's a good running back in high school, and they'll make them a defensive back. So Jim Reed goes, we're probably going to make you a defensive back. And I was like, whatever, I'm on scholarship. I'll do whatever you want me to do. But he goes, we're going to give you one spring at running back. I said, okay. So I'll never forget it. So I have this, we go to the spring game, and I broke a run for like 87 yards, touchdown run. And I came off the field, and he's like, yep, you're staying at running back. So there was no talk about me going to defensive back. So that first season, like I said, I redshirted. And first game of the year, I'll never forget, we played Delaware. I think I got 2 carries, and we lost. Second game of the year, we were at Holy Cross, and we weren't doing good. And they put me in, and I ended up catching a couple screen passes, and I broke a couple runs. And we won that game. And then the next game, my redshirt freshman year, we played Boston University, and they gave me the starting job. And my first game ever as a starter, I think I rushed for 153 yards and 2 touchdowns, and I started every game since. So yeah, and I played. I mean, UMass, we were a running team, so I was a mutter. My mother was a mutter. My father was a mutter. I was a one cut and go type of guy, not flashy. We ran the ball a lot, and we had great defense, and we ran the ball. I mean, that's kind of what you did in the early '90s. It wasn't really flashy. And then my junior year was probably my best year. I had almost 1,600 yards rushing. And you asked me my best game was against University of Rhode Island. I rushed for 313 yards. So good career, no complaints, great teammates, great offensive linemen. Listen, if you're a running back, you're only as good as your offensive lineman. I had great offensive linemen, and we had a blast with them. I kind of thought of myself as an offensive lineman trapped in a running back body. So I kind of ran with that style, but I had a lot of fun at UMass.
Awesome. So you were 2007 UMass Hall of Fame member. So we're moving on from UMass. You spent, like you said, a cup and a half of coffee in NFL. How was that time? What are some of the memories you had?
Yeah, so it's interesting. You know, coming out of UMass, I didn't get drafted, and I didn't get really signed as a free agent. So my agent was like, you should go to Canada and play. So I said, okay. So against my better judgment, I listened to him, and I signed a contract with the Montreal Alouettes. And I got up there. I was there one day, and they cut me. So I'm like, what the heck is this? I got cut. So I learned early on what it means to lose your job. So I got cut, and I was basically like, why did you guys even sign me? He's like, well, we're hamstrung and how many Americans we can have on our team, so we got to let you go. So obviously that was very aggravating. I came back home, and long story short, the Buffalo Bills that next season ended up giving me I did a couple NFL workouts. I worked out for the Steelers, worked out for the Bills, where when you say you worked out, it's basically a job interview. You go there, you're going to run a 40-yard dash, you're going to catch some balls, you're going to do some agility drills. And I had good workouts for all the NFL teams I worked out for. And the Bills ended up signing me. And so I moved to Buffalo. And then that first year, I had a really good camp with Buffalo, and I was real close to making the team. And I'll never forget. So we came down to the second to the last cut, and Marv Levy brought me in. He said, we got to let you go. He goes, but it's because of a numbers situation. But he goes, there's a good chance in 4 days, we're going to call you back and we're going to sign you to our developmental squad, which is the official name. Everyone knows it as the practice squad. So he goes, I just can't do it right now because the NFL rules say we have to wait 4 days. But he's like, we're going to sign you back to our developmental squad. So I was happy with that. I said, all right, I know I'll be a part of the team. And then what happened was I went home to Rochester, and the next, I think maybe that night, the Washington Redskins called me, and they said, hey, we'd like you to come down here. And we have an opening for our developmental squad. We'd like to bring you in as running back, because they had scouted me. Their pro personnel had scouted me during that off season during that preseason in the different preseason games we had. So I said, oh, what the heck? Buffalo knows what I can do. So I flew down to Washington. The only thing that stunk was, it was at the end of training camp, and the NFL training camps are like 5 weeks long. And I had to do the whole workout thing. And I had to run a 40-yard dash, catch passes. Norv Turner was the head coach at the time. Charlie Casserly was the GM, and the running back coach was a legendary coach by the name of Bobby Jackson. So I go down there, and they probably brought in 15 running backs like me that had been cut across the league, and they were working us all out. And so they just watched. So I ran a 40-yard dash, and I ran like a 4.41. I can't even believe I ran that fast, being how sore I was from camp. And caught a bunch of passes. Long story short, though, I had a really good workout. I knew I knocked it out of the park. And I went in there. I was in the shower, and their longtime athletic trainer by the name of Bubba Tyre came in the shower, and there was a couple other guys showering. And he said, "Hey, Rene, coach wants to see you in his office when you get out of the shower." So right then and there, I go, okay, they're going to offer me a contract. So I went up and sat down with North Turner. He said, "Hey, we want to sign you to our developmental squad." I said, "Great. Can I just let Buffalo know what you're doing?" Just, kind of as a courtesy, because I was in camp with them. And then I kind of caught Buffalo by surprise. So they just didn't do anything. So I signed with the Redskins. So I was with the Redskins on their developmental squad for probably a little over the first half of the season in '97. And it was awesome because the backup quarterback was Jeff Hostetler, who had won a Super Bowl with the Giants. So when we did scout team stuff, so if the Redskins were getting ready to play the Cowboys or the Eagles, I was the running back. I would mimic Emmitt Smith or whoever. But Jeff Hostetler was my quarterback. It was awesome. So we'd be in the huddle, and he'd be like, "You know what? Do this on this play. Run, do that." We had a lot of fun. And then what happened was Buffalo, and this is '97, so it's really before the internet's taking off or anything like that. I remember in Washington, every organization's different, guys. Some organizations cut a lot of guys, some don't. Washington had been cutting people left, right, and center. I mean, every week, in and out, guys would get cut, guys would get signed, guys would get cut. So you're just kind of always walking on eggshells as a young player. You're just trying to play your best. And I'll never forget, it was a Saturday morning, and Charlie Casterly, the GM, walked up to me during practice. He said, "Hey, I need to talk to you when practice ends." So I'm like, okay. So I'm like, they're going to cut me. I'm like, because they had been cutting people like crazy. So I remember there was another wide receiver, Chris Johnson, that I was friends with. I went up to, I said, "Man, I think they're gonna cut me. Charlie wants to talk to me because they're not gonna cut you. You've been playing great." So I went up to Charlie. He goes, "Here's the deal." He goes, "Buffalo had an injury. They're gonna sign you to the 53-man active roster because that's the only way you can get signed off another team's developmental squad is to go to an active roster." So he's like, "Buffalo is going to sign you to their active roster. We would have to cut someone to keep you. I can't cut anyone right now." So I told him you were going to say yes, which of course I did. So basically he was like, "Go see my secretary. She's got your plane ticket." I mean, obviously this is, again, before smartphones where you just have a ticket. I had to go get my paper ticket, and they're like, "Yeah, your flight's in like an hour and a half." So I lived in Virginia. I left everything in Virginia, got on a plane. I mean, couldn't even call my parents. And I had a lot of friends in Buffalo because obviously I had lived the off season there and went to training camp there. I didn't even get a chance to tell them. So I just basically I was in practice Saturday morning. It actually might have been Friday morning with the Redskins. And then Saturday morning I was in a Buffalo uniform. And that's how fast stuff happens. And then that Monday I drove back down, actually flew back down to Virginia, packed all my stuff up. My dad drove my car down, and then we drove back to Buffalo. But it was a crazy time, but a really awesome time. And then I spent the rest of that year with the Bills on the active roster. Unfortunately, never got activated in a regular season game. I was supposed to play get activated for the Green Bay Packers, but they deactivated me right before the game, and that's one of those things that happens. And then I was with Buffalo again in '98 that entire year, and then they just didn't renew my contract. And then in '99, I played in NFL Europe for the Frankfurt Galaxy. And when I went to Europe, I kind of knew this was to me, it was a paid vacation. I kind of knew I was going to move on with my life. I was ready. But I went over there, and it ended up being great. We won the World Bowl, so I got to end my career with a World Bowl championship. Got a really nice World Bowl ring. My quarterback was Jake Delhomme, who went on to have a great NFL career. So I had a lot of fun with that. So I came back in July of '99 after we won the World Bowl, and that was the last I played football.
It's interesting you say that because we were interviewing another person named Ahmad Galloway. He played for Alabama, and he said the same thing. When he went to Europe, it felt like a paid vacation. So you just got like the exact same words. Maybe like the other players were saying the same thing. Back to the Bills. Yeah. Were you at the Music Miracle game?
I was not. I was off the team then. I watched that game. I never forget it. I was in a sports bar in Rochester, New York, watching that game, and I knew all those guys. I was on that special team. on that kickoff team before, and I remember watching it. And I don't know if you ever watch any games that I broadcast for ESPN. I'm kind of a rules nerd. I think as an analyst, I think it's incumbent upon us to know the rules. It drives me nuts when you hear broadcasters, something happens to a game and they don't know and they guess. I hate that. If you don't know, don't say anything. But if you know it, explain to the viewer what's going on. So when that happened and everyone's going, oh, it's a lateral, I know the rule is if they deem the ball is on a straight line, that is a lateral. And it looked like it wasn't a lateral, but I was like, this is going to be a lateral, and that touchdown's going to stand, and people are going to go nuts. So that was a crazy, crazy game and crazy ending.
Yeah, like the quarterback was not the same quarterback when you were there, right?
So I played with all of them. So when I first got there, Jim Kelly had just retired when I signed. I signed with the Bills probably a month after Jim Kelly retired. So I played with Rob Johnson, got signed from Jacksonville.
Yeah, Rob Johnson.
He had that phenomenal game as a backup quarterback, and he made millions of dollars, went to Buffalo, and never really did anything after that. Todd Collins was there. Doug Flutie. Doug and I had the same agent, so I had known Doug. I was actually at Buffalo before Doug got there. Alex Van Pelt was with the Bills. So, yeah, all those same quarterbacks were there.
Now, was there some players that were at those 4 Super Bowls like they all lost to? Or they were all gone by then?
Yeah, so I played. So Andre Reed was still on the team.
Wow.
Thurman Thomas was still on the team. Bruce Smith was still on the team. So there was a handful of guys that had played in all those Super Bowls that were still there.
Interesting. Ryan, one more question. NFL Europe, did most of the players thought that they didn't have a chance in the NFL? Was there a percentage of people that thought, well, I probably won't make it? Or was there some hope when you were there?
No, I think the majority of guys were still trying to get back in the NFL. I was a little different because I had been in the NFL for a couple of years, and I knew I wasn't getting re-signed. So they had a roster spot for me. Most of the guys were allocated trying to get back. And then what happened back then too, we're going way back. So I think it was 99 or 2000 is when they had the first year of the XFL. So a lot of those guys that didn't make it back to the NFL, almost all of them went and played in the XFL for that year or two. So, I think that's the thing, guys. When you get to that point, you're just trying to play. If there's a pro league out there that's going to pay you to play a game, you play. You just try to prolong your career. And a lot of guys did that because I tell young people all the time, there's nothing wrong with. There comes a point where you have to move on with your life, and I came to that point, and everybody comes to that point at some time. But once you turn that page and you leave, it's over. So I tell people all the time, play while you can do it, while they're going to sign you, while you still have the ability to do it. Because once you turn the page and leave, very, very seldom do you see someone a year or 2 years later say, I'm going to go back and play. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, like the window is so short. Do you think like there should be I would say like another league like the XFL or like the having another league, just to have like a second chance? Do you think that they should be something like that now? Or
I do. See, NFL Europe was very successful.
I know what happened.
Well, it was too expensive because what had happened was the NFL was paying for it. So it's just, you're not only paying the salaries, you're paying the coaches, you're paying the housing, insurance, You're flying your officials over there. So it just got too expensive for them. So now I was the analyst for the Orlando Apollos for you can't even say 1 year that we had the Alliance of American Football. We had it for half a season. Guys, that football was good. And a lot of those guys made it to the NFL, and it was good football. And so I think a spring league can make it, but I think the NFL has to be a part of it. And I think that's what the Alliance was banking on, that the NFL would take some ownership. Obviously, the XFL got cut short because of the coronavirus. So we don't know if they're going to come back. So, yes, I think you can have another league. I think the quality of play is good enough out there. Now, I think you have to be strategic in the cities you put it in. Orlando doesn't have a pro football team. So, we had for the home games, I think we averaged 15,000, 17,000 fans. That's fine, guys. That's great. And the quality of play, like I said, was pretty good. So to answer your question, yes, I think we definitely can have it. You just have to temper your expectations. You're not competing with the NFL. You're not competing with college. It's just a place for a lot of really good players that are still out there and capable of playing to get noticed and have a shot of maybe making it back to the NFL. And guess what? If you don't make it back to the NFL, you're still getting paid to play a sport. And that's the other thing too. When you play in leagues like that, you can't expect to make a ton of money. When I played in NFL Europe, we got $1,000 a week. That's what we got paid. But our housing was paid for and our food was paid for. So heck, if you're 23, 24, 25 years old, you'll do that all day long. And so if it can keep you playing. So.
And like the CFL, why hasn't the CFL been strong? It feels like not many players come from the CFL to the NFL.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So the CFL, a lot of people, I don't know if they know this, is actually older than the NFL. That's how it's been around a long time. Same thing. With money-wise, they just, they don't have huge budgets, but it's popular up there, and they limit, and I don't know the exact rules, but I know they keep their rosters lower. Their rosters are around 40 players as compared to the 53 on the NFL rosters, and they limit the amount of Americans. So I think they can have, used to be 17 Americans on the squad. So yeah, you don't see a lot of guys coming from Canada. You do a few, but not a lot anymore. You used to see more back in the day, like
Doug Flutie.
Doug Flutie did it, but again, for a lot of those guys that it didn't work out in the NFL that go up to Canada, they find their niche and they can have a nice 5, 6, 7, 8 year career, make decent money. You're not going to get super rich, but again, you're making money for playing a sport, and so you can't complain about that.
Yeah. So going back just a little bit, this fun fact. I remember going to the Bills and Colts game, the last game of the regular season, where they started Rob Johnson to rest Doug Flutie. Peyton Manning only played a quarter in that game, so even in a fair competition, obviously the Bills, won the game, and then that pressure. Wade Phillips had no choice but to put Rob Johnson in the game because of the owner wanted that. I'm sure that made for an interesting locker room during that time. But moving forward, so you ended your playing career in Frankfurt in 2020. Right now, you're a part-time, ESPN broadcaster, and then a full-time Orlando police detective. How did you get from there, from Frankfurt to Orlando as a police detective?
Yeah. So, and actually it's funny because that story ties in. So when I came back from Frankfurt in July of '99, I was in Boston visiting some friends, some former teammates, and one of them, quarterback by the name of Anthony Catterton, who is from Orlando. So he played at Boone High School here, a big high school in the Orlando area, really downtown Orlando. And I remember him saying, hey, my stepmom's a detective with the Orlando Police Department. And I had always been intrigued with law enforcement. I wanted to be a federal agent, but they had known that I wanted to get into law enforcement. So he said, hey, my stepmom's a detective there. If you have a 4-year degree right now, they're hiring like crazy. So I thought to myself, okay. Didn't think much of it. And, but I applied. Again, Murphy's Law, when you're not expecting stuff. I applied, and like 4 months later, they hired me and they put me through the process, and I passed all the tests and I was hired. So I go, I guess I'm moving to Orlando. So yeah, I moved to Orlando the end of '99, early 2000, and went through the academy and became a police officer. And like, it's amazing. I look back now, I've been here over 20 years. And I've been a detective for over 12 years now, so more than half of my career. And so how I got back into football was I missed football, right? I'm a police detective, and I missed football. And I did, my wife's like, why don't you coach? And I did. I helped out. I've helped out in high schools around here, Pop Warner, you name it. But I wanted to get back into football kind of more meaningful. So I had a lot of contacts in the college level if I wanted to get into coaching. But by this time, I have a career in law enforcement. I'm working towards a pension. I have benefits. I have kids. I live in Orlando. It's not like I can just say, okay, I'm going to stop being a police officer, a police detective. I'm going to go to college coaching, because that's a tough profession. That's a profession you get into when you're single and young to begin with, and then you kind of build your family. And it's just, anyone that knows anything about college coaching, it's tough. But I had missed football. So in '07, as you said, I got inducted into the UMass Hall of Fame. So I went up to UMass and was inducted into the Hall of Fame. And then that Saturday, there was a college football game. The ceremony's on Friday night, the induction ceremony. And then on Saturday, college football game. So at halftime, I was the guest of the radio broadcast. So I went in there and I think we did like a 7-minute segment. It's the first time I'd ever put headsets on with a microphone and talked on the radio or TV for that matter. And I got done. I go, man, that was really cool. I just really liked it. So I got back home and I said, I'm going to just start like trying to figure out if I can get into broadcasting. So a lot of stuff happened, but long story short, I got in contact with ESPN and they basically were like, you have to you have to have a demo tape. We have to hear you. And I was naive. I didn't know if you could audition or anything like that. And they said, no, you need a demo tape. They said, we don't care what it is. It could be high school, but no, we need a demo tape. We need to hear your work. So fast forward in 2009. So it was really 2008, the next year, kind of went through and I didn't get any traction with broadcasting. So I called UMass back, my alma mater, and I said, hey, I really want to get into broadcasting. Can I join the UMass Sports Network? And they're like, are you kidding me? I said, no. They go, we would love to have you. We just can't afford to fly you from Orlando to Massachusetts each week and then to the away games to call games. We just can't afford it. I said, don't worry about it. I said, I'll pay the bill. And, everyone I talked to said, don't ever do that. You don't. But to me, it was kind of like it was an investment. I was investing in myself. So it was crazy. So I was a detective at the property detective. And I didn't even tell the Orlando Police Department I was doing it, which now obviously I have permission and all the proper paperwork's filled out. But I would work Monday through Friday as a detective. And then every Friday night I would fly, I was paying my own way. I'd find the cheapest flight. It was a Southwest flight. There was a Southwest flight that left Orlando at 8 p.m. Friday night, flew to Manchester, New Hampshire, got there at about 11. I would rent a car. And then from Manchester to Amherst, Massachusetts was about an hour and 20-minute drive. And I would drive there and I'd get to Amherst about 1 a.m. And then a good friend of mine, Dan Markowski, who was an associate athletic director at UMass at the time, former offensive lineman and roommate of mine, I would sleep in his basement. So I'd get there at 1 o'clock, I'd sleep in his basement. I would get up Saturday, go to the stadium, call the game, go out, have a few soda pops after the game Saturday night, and then drive back to New Hampshire on Sunday, fly home, and then do it all again. And then on away games, I would fly to the away games, and then I would stay in a hotel room actually with that same friend, Dan Markowski, because he traveled with the team as an associate AD. And so after that year of radio, I had a demo, and I got that back to ESPN. And that very next year, they offered me 3 games. I did 3 games in 2010 on ESPN 3, which is their digital platform, which ended up being great because I don't think they didn't create ESPN 3 to be a kind of like a breeding ground for announcers or a practice ground for announcers, but it's a great place to basically see if you can do it. And I'll never forget the first game I did was Temple Villanova. It ended with a game-winning field goal by Temple in Philadelphia. And I just remember when I got done, I had never called a TV game before. I'd only done radio. And I just was kind of like, all right, here you go. You have your opportunity. Don't drop the ball. And I just remember doing that game. And I remember getting done and thinking, man, I love this. I want to do this. I want to keep doing this as much as I can. And then, I just worked my way up the ladder with ESPN, starting with ESPN 3 and then regional syndicated stuff, which they don't even have anymore. Then I did some national high school stuff. And then my first full-time gig, if you will, for football for ESPN was 2013 when they gave me the national high school package because, they do a national high school game of the week. And so I was the lead analyst with Adam Amin was my partner, who now Adam has left and is just an absolute superstar. And he's over with Fox Sports now. But yeah, just kind of moved up the ladder. And now, the last few years I've been full time with them, doing national college football games each and every week.
That's an awesome story, Rene. Just cool how, everything kind of worked out, the right way for you. Like you say, Murphy's Law, Well,
and I tell people all the time too, if you work hard at something, it's not always going to happen. But if you keep trying, when you get the shot, you know what I mean? The old cliche, when opportunity knocks, make sure you can answer. And I tell people all the time, I'm an exception to the rule because I got a lot of breaks. I worked hard, don't get me wrong, but a lot of things fell my way and I took advantage of that. Because I remember the guys at UMass, Josh Mauer, the play-by-play, who I'm still friends with, who's the voice of the Pawtucket Red Sox. I remember him saying, I cannot believe after 1 year of radio, you were able to get hired with ESPN. And I said, it's just, it just happened. And I feel blessed that it happened that way. And I don't take it for granted because there's a lot of young guys that, again, broadcasters will give their right arm to have a chance to work for ESPN and in particular college football. So I don't take it for granted. I bust my butt every year trying to get better at my craft. And with that said, though, whenever a young person calls me for advice, I always give them advice because I wouldn't have made it to where I am as a broadcaster without advice and guidance along the way. And so whenever someone needs, I get random emails and text messages and Facebook messages and Twitter messages, and I always try to help people out. And I think that's the right thing to do, to try to give back.
Before we head into, finish up with some current college football issues, do you ever do any other sports other than football, or you just stick with?
I've just done football, and I get asked this question all the time. Listen, I'm a capitalist, so if any network wants to pay me to do any sport, I'm not against calling any sport. I'm well versed in multiple sports. So, but for me, as a former player, you kind of get pigeon-toed into being an analyst. But I would love if the opportunity came to do sideline reporting for other sports. I think that's something that I would be up to. So, but right now, so far, just football.
Have you been considered to do some NFL stuff?
No NFL yet. But I wouldn't be against it. But I will say this: listen, I love football in general. I love the NFL. College football is my passion. I don't think there's anything better than college football, and that's just me. I just think it's the greatest thing. It's just the pageantry of it. It's funny. You go to people's homes or you work with people, and the wife might have went to this school and the husband went to this school, and it's just like something about college football that just gets everybody energized.
Yeah, it just has more personal style. It feels like
Absolutely.
League in England, like everyone's attached to their club.
Yep.
And same for college football, has that same vibe, things like that. But college football season schedule. What are your thoughts? What do you think is going to happen? Do you think most of the conferences will play within their conference, or what have you heard?
Yeah, I think we're going to play football. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I don't know if you guys follow me on Twitter, but I am very optimistic, and I'm like that in life, guys. I just think, listen, there's too much negative stuff out there in the world in general, okay? And so it drives me nuts when people are just real negative, and there's been a lot of people negative about college football, right? And like, I'll give you a case in point. Like, every time a college team suspends their workouts, right, because there was a COVID, a couple people tested positive, or they say we're going to suspend our workouts, it's like front page news, it's doom and gloom. And I tweeted someone the other day, I said, I think it was Michigan State suspended their workouts. I said, how many teams does that make in the FBS that have suspended workouts? And he goes, I think it's 10. So I said, okay, so there's still like 124 teams that haven't suspended their workouts that are still busting their butt getting ready for a season. So I'm like, it's always about the doom and gloom. Listen, the coronavirus is real. We all know that. But we also know the science and the medical, what it says in terms of who it goes after and, what it does to young people, or I should say what it doesn't do to young people. So we have to monitor it. We have to do our due diligence, wear a mask, social distance, but to shut everything down, and particularly not just college football, colleges themselves, because kids need to go to college, kids need to go to school. So, I think we will have college football, barring something really bad happening, and knock on wood, that doesn't happen. And, not to change, but obviously, Santiago, what happened with the Marlins. I think everybody does, because of course, doom and gloom, that's all you hear. Now, there's some rumors on how they all may have caught the coronavirus, but we'll let that work itself out. But I'm kind of, it's almost a good thing that it happened. I mean, you don't wish that it happened on them, obviously, but you have to figure out what you're going to do, right? Because anybody out there that thinks any pro league is going to go on or college is going to go on, and you're not going to have someone test positive or a coach, it's going to happen. I think it's inevitable here in the United States. So you have to have plans of what you can do. And I think Major League Baseball is learning that quickly. And I think so far they're doing a good job. So I think we have to learn to push through it until we get a vaccine. So with that said, I like what I'm hearing from college football. I think it's going to go. And just to get to your main question, so we know the the Big Ten said they're going to do conference only, and then the Pac-12 kind of followed suit with them. I understand that because it gives the conferences flexibility of what we just talked about. If a team maybe has to take a week off because they had a couple positive tests or something happened, it's much easier to move the schedule around within a conference, change stuff around, and then you're controlling the testing, you're controlling all that. So I completely understand why the Big Ten and the Pac-12 are doing that. I love the ACC. You want to talk about optimism? They come out today. They say we're going to do a 10+1, 10 conference games, which allows Notre Dame to come into conference this year, which I think is great for everybody. Because I think when it's all said and done and that NBC contract dries up, if it ever does, Notre Dame's going to go to the ACC, and Notre Dame is a much-needed boost for the ACC because other than Clemson, a lot of those teams in the ACC just haven't been playing the type of football that conference deserves. So I think with Notre Dame there this year, that's a boost to the conference. The 10+1, I love it. And now I think we'll see what the SEC and the Big 12 do. I think the rumors on Twitter before I jumped on with you guys was that the SEC is just going to do a 10-game conference only. So that'll be interesting. And so people might get mad because you're going to lose some of those rivalry games, the Georgia Tech, Georgia, the Louisville, Kentucky, the Clemson, South Carolina. You're probably going to lose some of those. But the cool thing about a 10-game SEC schedule is you're going to pick up some SEC games that normally we don't get forever. For instance, I think you might get Alabama, Florida this year. That's a top 10 matchup. So You'll still get some good games. And, I do a lot of the American Conference for ESPN. So I think they're kind of waiting to see. They still want to play non-conference games because that's how you get your recognition, right, as a group of five playing some of those Power Five. So to answer your question, I think we will have football. I think it's going to be a little delayed. I like the ACC. I like that they said September 7th and 12th. You know why they said the 7th? Because that's Labor Day. That's a big college football day, that Monday. So you could kick off your ACC slate on ESPN and ABC Monday night game. So I think that's a good start to the season for them.
That's a good strategy. I like that train of thought.
Yeah. So when talking about, so you're talking a little bit about Group of Five American. Let's go to the, maybe the negative side of conference only games. Me and Santiago went to the Liberty University, who's scheduled for 3 games against the ACC, Virginia Tech, Syracuse, NC State. So now those schools are allowed to play one non-conference game. I could see Virginia Tech and Liberty playing because they're close local schools, but it looks like they'll probably lose out on Syracuse and NC State. And then you got all the other, Group of Five conferences who depend, the Liberty is unique because they got a lot of money compared to a lot of other Group of Five teams. But your school, UMass, probably depends on those money games to fill out the budget, especially Conference USA because they have a very low revenue TV contracts, and Sunbelt, how is a Group of Five going to manage this, hopefully a one-off year, with lacking, those Power Five games?
Well, you're on the money, Ryan, because those schools have to just try to keep their head above water this year. UMass was scheduled to play Auburn. They're getting, I think, $2 million for that game. That is huge for their athletic budget. So if they lose that, that hurts them. Liberty, you guys know, you went to school there. So I don't know if you know, I called the Liberty BYU game last year. So I got to sit down and talk with Hugh Freeze, and that was a fun game. And Liberty, in doing prep work for that game and talking to people about Liberty, the one thing that everyone talks about Liberty is how great their facilities are. Everyone is scared to death with Liberty because they have such great facilities and the finances they have that they've put behind not just their football program, but their athletic program. Liberty is trying to be the religious school, the Christian school, if you will, in the northeast, if you will, of what BYU's doing has done in the Midwest. That's why they played that game, and I could really see that coming. So you're right. I think Liberty will survive. They still get screwed a little bit. All those schools do if they lose those non-conferences. So, for instance, we'll talk about UMass for a second. We just talked about the Auburn game. I don't think UMass will have a problem getting a schedule together, right? I think they'll get enough. They'll be able to play 10, 11 games. That's not going to be a problem. The problem is the money that you just talked about. You're going to lose all those money games. So that hurts a program like UMass and some of those others. Of course, UConn's playing an independent schedule this year as well because they left the American. And so I'm here in Orlando, so I'm in the backyard of UCF. So they're going nuts here because UCF had North Carolina on their schedule, and that was here at Bright House Stadium in Orlando, which was going to be a huge game, a very good ACC team in North Carolina coming to town. So now you're going to lose that game. And then they're supposed to play Georgia Tech. So you could essentially lose 2 ACC games, which is killer for a school like UCF who's trying to, get on the radar and be mentioned each and every year in the top, 15, 20 teams in the nation. So there, if you're the American and really the non-conference group of fives too, the UMasses, the Liberties, BYUs, you're kind of looking to see what the SEC does because the SEC goes 10 games plus 1, right? They would do 1 non-conference and they would do that for those rivalry games. So that takes up some non-conference games. If the SEC says we're going to go 10 only, no non-conference, well, then that opens up some more non-conference in the ACC, which I think helps the UCFs and the Liberties and the UMass maybe to pick some of those games up. So it's fascinating, guys, what's going on because from the broadcasting side of it, not only do these conferences have to say, okay, here's how many games we're playing, then they got to put the schedule out, right? These are the dates we're playing on. Then it has to go to the respective networks, ESPN, Fox, and then they got to slate the games. What's going on TV? Where's it going? What broadcast crews? Are we sending the broadcast crews to the game? Are the crews going to do it from a studio? What are we doing? How are we traveling? There is logistically so much stuff that has to go on behind the scenes. It's amazing, but with that all said, I think it's going to happen. I'm very optimistic.
What do you think is going to happen with the playoffs and the postseason?
Yeah, I think the college football playoff committee it's a stubborn bunch. Okay, this was the year I talked about this earlier. Mark Daniels, who's the voice of UCF, who has a radio show here in Orlando, he brought it up on his radio show. He goes, this would be a great year. Because it's just, for God's sakes, look, Notre Dame is in the ACC this year. They're going to play for an ACC, the opportunity to play for an ACC championship. This is a year that you can kind of just throw everything out the window, right? So why not have an 18 playoff or a 12, whatever? You can do whatever you want. And guess what? If it stinks and it doesn't work, everyone knows this was a one-off. You go back to normal next year. I don't think they will. Excuse me. I don't think they will. I think they'll stay with their top 4 format, and then they're just, the main thing to college football, and everyone gets mad, is it's great debate every year, and I think it's what makes college football great is we're always debating who the top 4 is. At the end of the day, the college football selection committee, their number one task is to put in what they believe are the best 4 teams, not the most deserving, the best 4, no matter what metric they use. So at the end of the day, whether a team plays 10 games, 11 games, 12 games, they're going to look at these teams and they're going to put the top 4. And I think that's ultimately what they're going to do. I don't think they're going to change their format whatsoever. Although I think this would be a great year to change it, but I don't think they will.
I agree. I think this is the best year to have a experimental 8-team, 6-team to see how it goes. Maybe like the best of the Power 5, whatever. Ryan, one more before we land this plane.
Sure. Yeah, I would just, it's going on that point, especially with this year, not everybody's playing the same type of schedule. You said ACC might be playing 11 games, probably big Pac-12, Big Ten playing 10 games. The the different, amount of data points we like to say in college football is going to be different. That's going to be a heck of a job for this playoff committee to value each of these teams, rightfully, especially 10 SEC games. By the end of 10 SEC games, your body's going to be banged up. If Alabama and Auburn are playing the last week, they're going to have half their team, not playing because, the rigors of that schedule. That's, people will bang on the SEC for playing, the likes of UMass Liberty throughout the year, but they need those games to kind of save face for the end of the year. Like I said, I would love to see, 8 teams and give, the American Conference. We'll spend, that's the second on the American. Going into this year, who do you think is a favorite in that conference? You talked about UCF. Memphis is another good team. Cincinnati, I think Desmond Ritter is a really good quarterback. Luke Fickell is a great coach. Who do you think in that conference? And, is there a sleeper you like to, you think about?
Well, the thing I love about the American this year is now that UConn is gone, they're going to go one division. So you're not going to have an East and a West. So everyone's in one division, which I like. And so the top 2 teams are going to play the AAC championship. Cincinnati, I really like Cincinnati. The one that you didn't mention that I think is going to be even better this year was SMU and Sonny Dykes. Nice. I think that's a good team. They got good receivers, good quarterback play. So watch out for them. The wild card is Dana Holgorsen, right? He went from West Virginia to Houston. De'Ara King is gone. He's going to be starting for the U down in Santiago's neck of the woods.
That's right.
They've already named him the starter. And I've seen De'Ara King in person a bunch of times. The guy's the real deal. So Houston, though, in the American is a little wild card. I think Navy, you can never rule Navy out. I love the American. I think it's a great conference. Everyone thinks it's hokey that they call themselves Power 6, but they really are. They really are right there with the other conferences. So, and I think UCF's going to be there again. So that is going to be a fun conference to watch. So it'll be interesting what they do with their schedule in terms of non-conference. Obviously, they want non-conferences guys because they want, Ryan, you were just talking about, they want some marquee wins if they can get them against the Power 5. And I mean, we know what the argument's going to be, guys, at the end of the year. The SEC is going to say, listen, we played 10 SEC schools. This is crazy. Our schedule is superior to everybody else. The ACC is going to say, well, we played 10 conference games plus a non-conference game. So this season, although crazy, right, with everything going on, really has a chance to be super fun and fascinating. So I just can't wait to get going with it. And I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, closing, I love, you say Twitter, I love when you get to a game day and you put out the picture of the field and you say, this is my office for the day. It's one you can tell you really love the game, really love, your job, Rene, and, I watch a lot of those games on ESPN because I do love the American Conference. May not have the sex appeal of the big Power 5, but the athletes they have, and it's usually high scoring, so it's usually fun. Minus maybe a Temple who plays a little close to the vest, but
yeah.
But I would definitely appreciate that conference and all the group of 5, the App States, the Boise States, those are quality teams, that don't get the fanfare, but it was, close, it was great to see, SMU and Memphis on game day last year, and they put on a great game, great teams, like you said, Sonny Dykes, and Shane Bichelle, and Memphis with Mike Novell, then, great team, they always have great, athletes on that team, and this year is no exception for them. But anything else, Santiago, before we close?
Yeah, let's do some rapid fire. Let me ask you, who will do better professionally, Tua or Herbert?
Tua.
Ryan?
Well, as a Broncos fan, I'd hopefully Tua does better because I don't want
if Tua stays healthy. Let me preface that, Santiago.
I know.
Yeah, I'll go Tua too. Yeah.
Will the Patriots do well with Cam?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ryan,
yeah. It's been a tough couple of days for the Patriots.
Well, yeah, there's like 7 guys are sitting out, right? So
what is that? Is there a connection with that? Like, what do you see then? Is that a sign?
Man, I don't know, but I can't wait to see Bill. But if Bill Belichick can win with all these guys sitting out, I mean, forget about it, right? And Bill Belichick's the type of guy. He's like, listen, if you don't want to play, listen, I understand what's going on. I'm not going to hold it against you. Don't play. Give me someone who wants to play, and we're going to go play. I'll get them ready to play. So that's another fascinating aspect of this thing in the NFL wise. I can't wait to see.
Who will do better? Brady. Wait. I mean, who would do better? Way better, like Brady or Bill Belichick.
I think Tampa Bay's got a good team. I think Brady's going to have a good year in Tampa this year.
Interesting. Any rapid fire from you, Ryan?
Sure. Whenever I'm in, Central Florida, obviously we're usually on vacation, but my 1-2 go-to spot, that we found is Polo Tropical. That is my go-to. So let me ask you, Floridians, what is your go-to meal at Polo Tropical?
The Tropic Chop.
And I've had that before as well. So, yeah, excellent. And I love Polo Tropical. I've been eating there many times. Although, Santiago, especially down in South Florida, like Central Florida, we have so many original places that aren't chains where the food is phenomenal. Phenomenal.
Yeah. We have more Cuban than you guys. I think you guys have more Puerto Rican food.
Correct. Yeah. It's all good to me, though. I'll eat it all.
Anyways, poll question of the day: who makes the best chicken wings? The options is Wingstop, Hooters, KFC, or Wild Wing from Buffalo Wild Wings.
No, it's Wingstop out of those ones. And listen, I'm from Rochester, New York, so is Ryan. So we know chicken wings, and there's about 100 places that are better than all of them, but it's Wingstop out of them.
Exactly. Rene would probably say like Anchor Bar, right? Or,
I've been to Anchor Bar multiple times,
or
and
Duff, or
you can't find a bad place in Buffalo or Rochester. I mean, you go into any pizza joint, the wings are phenomenal. Doesn't matter.
That's right.
Absolutely, yes.
And Ryan, what's your choice from the poll question?
Those ones, yeah. If in the environment I'm going to watch a game, I'll probably say Buffalo Wild Wings, but it's but I don't think you could go wrong with any of those places either. But
Buffalo Wild Wings is winning. It's first place, 34%. Then Wingstop at second, Hooters at third, and KFC last. So you could definitely go on the Twitter account to the Sportscast One to vote. You got about 8 or 10 hours left, and able to vote because today is National Chicken Wing Day. So there might be some specials today. Who knows? I didn't check. We got to find out. Anyways, Rene, what is the best way for people to find you online?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter, Rene Ingoglia. It's RENEINGOGLIA. I know it's a mouthful. Believe me, when you start putting it in, I'm the only one. No one close with my name. So, I'm on Twitter. Try to stay active as I can. And like Ryan said, I always try to bring people behind the scenes of every broadcast I do. My partner, Mike Corey. I just think it's something cool that people like to see kind of what we do. So I think this year, depending on the travel and all that, this is going to be an interesting year to bring people behind the scenes because of everything going on. So I'll definitely try to do that this year for everybody.
Do you think you might have to like broadcast remotely, you think, or?
Yeah, I don't know. So we've never done it for football. It can be done, obviously, but as an analyst, if you're just looking at a game like you are at home on a monitor, you're limited what you can see. As an analyst, I'm looking at the whole field. I want to see what the safety's doing, if the safety's rotating over the top, if the corner's walking up in press coverage man to man. I watch the whole field. I watch the coaches. I kind of see what's going on the sideline. You're limited to a monitor. But with that said, if we have to go to studios and do it from a monitor, I've done that before at the Pop Warner Super Bowl here at Disney World. I can do it, and I will do it. So as long as we have football, I know every other announcer is the same as me. As long as we get football, we'll make it happen.
Yeah, because they did it because they're doing it for the Korean Baseball League.
They're doing it for Major League Baseball as well, I believe.
Oh, wow. So, Ryan Krista, what is the best way to reach you? Talk to you about Rochester.
Probably Mad Dog Report on Twitter, and of course the Sportscast One. A lot of up-to-date sports information. Rene, I hope, sometime in the future you'll get up to the mountain in Lynchburg, Virginia, and call it, I know you said you did a Liberty BYU, which is a great game. We fell just a little bit short in that game, but hopefully you'll get them in a couple of years. But, again, thank you for hopping on, giving us your story and sharing your inside information on college football.
Hey, thanks for having me. And I hope I do get to Lynchburg. And let me tell you, that game, remember Buckshot Calvert, man, that's one of the best names in all of college sports. Antonio Gandy Golden. They did some work that day, but they fell a little short.
Of course. Right. I mean, Gandy Golden, guy catches everything. It doesn't catch the ball. It comes right in his hands, But then
it happens.
Great player, and I hope nothing best for him in Washington this year. So
the Washington football team. Well,
yeah,
really appreciate you coming on to the Sportscast, and I hope to have you again.
Thanks for having me, guys. It was a lot of fun.